Hello YouTube, this is my updated version of my Dark Magician deck, and I'll be doing a new deck profile for it. So here we go. To start with the monsters, I run 3 copies of my Dark Magician, Sorcerer of Dark Magic, really powerful card of using, and I know people don't really recommend me of using this card, but I just think that this deck has a lot more potential to it. So that's why I run him in my deck, and plus he has good trap negations as well. And plus, it's not even once per turn. Really broken card. This Dark Magician Chaos I'm using is the errated version because a friend of mine told me that the one I had before was a secret rare and it was the old version of Dark Magician Chaos. And he told me that I might not be able to use it because if I was to use that Dark Magician Chaos, it might end up making that whole loop thing where you would spam Monster Reborn and all sorts of cards that could help you out. So I thought I might get the errated version instead of the old one because I don't want Demon or Monster Reborn getting banned again. So I thought using this in the deck. Currently now I'm using 1 Palladium Oracle Mahad because sometimes if you do see him in your first hand, it's a dead draw. But if you somehow manage to draw this card, it can be pretty good for you, especially against Blue Eyes players. And what's even better is that if it battles a dark monster, this card's attack points will be doubled. And what's even better, if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you get to summon a Dark Magician from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So yeah, it's pretty good. I'm currently using 3 Magician of Dark Illusions, and sorry for the glare, but that's just the light I'm using for the living room. But if I do get Apprentice Illusion Magician, I'm thinking about cutting Magician of Dark Illusion to 2. But it's still a good level 7, because it acts as the Dark Magician while only on the field, and it has 2 effects depending on what you do. So if you activate a spell or trap card during your opponent's turn, and if this card is in your hand, you get to special summon it to your field. And its additional effect, and you can only use it once, as in not once per turn, just once only. Now, if Magician of Dark Illusion is on the field, and you activate a spell or trap card, you can use this effect to revive a Dark Magician from your graveyard back to the field. So it's best to use 3 of these, and it's just good for Xyz play or even for fusions. Heck, you can even use this card for Dedication through Light and Darkness, which I'll get in a few moments. Next, I run Dark Magician Girl. Now, it's not really necessary to run Dark Magician Girl in your deck, though it does gain points for every 1 Dark Magician or Magician of Black Chaos, which I do not run, because it's redundant of me using. But you're going to see why I run Dark Magician Girl in this deck, and trust me, she's also a good staple card in the deck as well. Next, I run Skilled Dark Magician. Now, people don't really use Skilled Dark Magician in their main decks, but personally, in my opinion, I think it's a good idea of using, because the deck has so much synergy to it. It would just mainly rely on most spell cards instead of less traps. But the point being for this card is that anytime you or your opponent activates a spell card, this will gain 1 spell counter. When it has a maximum of 3, you contribute it and special summon a Dark Magician from your hand, deck, or graveyard just out of the field. And what's even better is that if you have a Dark Magical Circle on your field, you can use this effect to banish any card on your opponent's field. Though using Dark Magical Circle won't work on a Blue Eyes player unless if they have like Chaos Max, which won't work because Chaos Max can be targeted or be destroyed by card effects. Therefore, you won't use Dark Magical Circle's effect to banish Chaos Max. But I still think, in my personal opinion, it's good to run this at least at 1. Next is Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. Now, I took some notes from Cyber Knight, and it's actually a good idea to use, because if you somehow manage to inflict battle damage to your opponent, you can target any 2 monsters in your opponent's graveyard and banish them. And what's even better is that while it's on the field, your opponent can't remove any of their cards from their graveyard. Well, yeah. So like, let's say like you do go against a Blue Eyes player and they have Return of the Dragon Lords in their graveyard, they're more likely want to banish that card just to protect their dragons. But if you somehow manage to inflict battle damage with this card, you can just easily get rid of it. Next, you have to run 3 Magician's Rod. Now, I know in most Dark Magician decks, people always run 3 of these, and I do take note of that. And the reason being is because when you normal summon it, you get to search for any spell or trap card that specifies on Dark Magician. But on a side note, you can't search Eye of Timaeus because the wording of that card states Dark Magician Monster. I'm only going to give 2 examples because I don't want to make this video too long. Example, Dark Magician of Chaos and Dark Magician Knight. Those are Dark Magician related monsters because it has to be with the original Dark Magician. Well, not specifically the original Dark Magician, but point being is that it just has to be specifically the normal monster Dark Magician. Furthermore, if you activate a spell or trap card or effect while Rod is in your graveyard, you contribute a spellcaster and add this straight to your hand. So during your next turn, you get to normal summon it and then search whatever spell or trap card you need that states Dark Magician. I'm going to say it again, you can't search Eye of Timaeus with this card, nor with Dark Magical Circle, nor with Dark Magic Inheritance. Next, I run 1 copy of Chocolate Magician Girl. I'm thinking that if I do make some improvements to this deck, I might think about running at least 2 Chocolate Magician Girls. 1, I don't want to break, and 2, she has like a good draw power to it, because when you discard a spell card, well, a spellcaster type monster for her effect, you get to draw a card. And when she's targeted for an attack, and once per turn, you can select a spellcaster in your graveyard, any one of them, and, well, except Sorcerer Dark Magic, but you get to special summon it, then the attack target is changed to that monster, and their attack points are cut in half. Then they have to attack the monster that you special summoned with this card's effect. So to put it more simple, this card's pretty good. Next is Legion the Fiend Jester. Now, I've never seen any Dark Magician players use this card, but I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but they don't realize how much potential this card has. Because not only when you, during your main phase, you can instantly do another tribute summon for a spellcaster type monster in addition to your normal summon or set on a turn that you summon Legion. So like, let's say you have a spellcaster type monster already on your field or any other monster and you normal summon Legion. If you have a Dark Magician related monster in your hand, so let's say you do have the boss monster Dark Magician and you normal summon Legion, his effect will activate, giving you an additional normal summon. Therefore, you can tribute Legion and one other monster in your field to tribute summon a spellcaster. And what's even better is that when he leaves the field, you get to add a spellcaster type normal monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand. So let's say you tribute Legion and another monster with this card's effect for an additional normal summon, and this leaves the field. You get to basically search for a Dark Magician, and let's say you have Navigation in your hand. It can pretty much do a lot of potential for it. So I suggest running this card within at least 1 or 2. But since this is my deck build, I only run 1 because I only have 1 copy of this card. Next is Knight and Sorcerer. Now, in this deck I don't have any Synchro Monsters yet, but I only use this card just for its effect so that if I summon it with Navigation, I can use this effect to target any card up to 2 any cards in my opponent's grave and banish them. As I mentioned, if you go against a Blue Eyes player or any deck, you can use this effect to banish any card that your opponent might have in their grave that would seem useful to them. Next is Witch of the Black Forest. As mentioned, no Dark Magician players use this card, but in my build I think it's quite useful because when it's sent to the grave, well, from the field to the graveyard, you get to search for any monster with 1500 or less defense. And let's say if you do run this card, you'll more likely want to search for Magician's Rod because it has a defense of 100. therefore it makes it searchable for the deck. However, if it's been sent to the grave on that turn, you can't use its effect during that turn only. So I suggest at least running this card at 1. Last of the monsters is Electromagnetic Turtle. Now originally I did have Mathematician to send this to the grave, but I thought I want to make this heavily supported for Dark Magician, but yeah, if you do have this card in your grave and use this effect, it can definitely save your ass. So I suggest running this at 1 because you can only use this effect once per duel as it states. Onto the spell cards. Now I did mention before that there was a reason of me running Dark Magician Girl in this deck, and here's that reason. Dark Burning Magic. The card states that if you control monsters whose original names are Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl, destroy all cards your opponent controls. Now, let's say, okay, and I am going to make lots of references for Blue Eyes players because they're more likely to want to have Chaos Max, which is their boss monster, but let's see. Actually, no, this wouldn't work against Chaos Max, but it doesn't target. But Chaos Max does have an effect for it can't be targeted or be destroyed by card effects. But I was just hoping that this would be like an answer to get over it. But I guess it wouldn't really work though. But just in general, if they have like big resources for them, then you can just instantly ban it or destroy all the Blue Eyes cards. So like Alternative, Blue Eyes White Dragon, Dragon Spirit of White, all them cards. And yeah, it's a pretty decent card. But you can only use this card if you have Dark Magician or Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl. Sorry for that error. And in every Dark Magician deck that I've seen, you have to run 3 of Dark Magical Circle. It's like a main boss spell card of using, because when you activate it, you get to look at your top 3 cards of your deck. Now, you're not likely to get every single Dark Magician card you need, so it's much more like a chance kind, if you get what I'm saying. And anytime you normal summon or special summon a Dark Magician, except during a damage step, you get to target any card that your opponent controls on their field and banish it. So it's quite a useful card, but you can only use each of these effects once per turn. So like, let's say you summon 2 Dark Magicians at the exact same time, you can't banish 2 cards, because then that would be broken. Next, I run 2 copies of Dark Magic Veil. Now, it's not really much of a Dark Magician card, but it does work with him, because you may have to pay a stack to use its effect, but it does let you special summon a Dark Spellcaster from your hand or graveyard. Sorry if it gets a bit blurry, but yeah, it's pretty much of a good staple card of using. Next, I run 1 copy of Thousand Knives. Thousand Knives is searchable with Eternal Soul, Rod, Dark Magical Circle, and Inheritance, and not many people would tend to run Thousand Knives because you do have Dark Magical Circle that banish cards, but I'm just saying that if you do happen to have this card in your hand and you want to get rid of a monster that's so annoying, so like Alternative, then yeah, you can just easily get rid of it. And plus, this one's like a really good rarity of Prismatic Secret Rare. But yeah. Next is the most annoying card in a Dark Magician deck, but it's annoying that you can't search it, the Eye of Timaeus. Now, people tend to know that with Eye of Timaeus, it's basically polymerization, but specifically for Dark Magician monsters. Now, the wording of this card states that you can target a Dark Magician monster you control. Now, it doesn't state Dark Magician specifically as a Dark Magician monster, but normally you can still use Magician or Dark Illusion as a material because its name does count as Dark Magician while on the field. Now, you're normally thinking, oh, if I'm not running Eye of Timaeus, then will I have to run Polymerization? Yes, you could, but you will more likely want to run that at 3. But Eye of Timaeus is a really good card of using, and in my build I only run 1, but I'm thinking of getting another one. And yeah, it's also a pretty good card as well. Next, Dedication Through Light and Darkness. This one is really good for using with Dark Magician along with Dark Magician of Chaos, because you do get to summon it to your field as well. And it's a pretty decent card. Hold on a minute, I need to get the music back up. Sorry I had to play the music again, but just for good background. Next is Illusion Magic. Now, Illusion Magic is really a good spell card of using. Hold on, let me get it focused. Come on. Come on. There we go. So, when you use this card, you get to tribute a spellcaster for its effect as a cost, and you do get to add up to 2 copies of Dark Magician from your deck and or graveyard to your hand. Now, you're more likely just to add at least 1 if you have Magician Navigation in your hand, but if you somehow manage to draw 2, you're more likely want to add 2 Dark Magicians from your deck to your hand. So it's a pretty decent card, and you can only use it once per turn. Next, I'm running 1 Dark Magic Inheritance. Dark Magic Inheritance is actually quite of a decent card of me using, but I don't know why originally when this got printed from the Structure Deck Yugi, this was like a £10 card on eBay, but now it's a lot more cheaper to get. So what this card can do is that you get to banish 2 spells from your graveyard as a cost, and you get to add any spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, except I have Timaeus. Well, it doesn't say that, but I'm just pointing that out because, as I mentioned, it is a non-searchable card. And it also states you can also add a spell or trap card that lists Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl in its text, meaning you can also add Sage's Stone or Knight's Title or even Dark Burning Attack, because it does have Dark Magician Girl in its text, so pretty powerful card. Next, I run Dark Magic Attack, 1 copy of it, and I'm thinking if I should side this card for my side deck, but currently for now I'm just using it as a main deck card because it's quite useful to get rid of your opponent's back rows, and it's a really good card. And the one card they finally brought back into the game, Monster Reborn. Now, I'm glad that they brought back this card at 1 because I knew that when they were bringing out the Lost Art copy for this one for its OCG artwork, but they're bringing it into the TCG, the Konami had actually decided to bring this back at 1. So mostly now every deck is using Monster Reborn. And it's pretty still a simple card. Target any monster in either player's grave, special summon it to your field. Pretty powerful. Magical Dimension. This one, a friend of mine actually recommended me using because this one is actually quite powerful of using. Because if you have a spellcaster on your field, you get to tribute it and special summon a spellcaster from your hand. And what's even better is that you can destroy any monster on the field. Next, final spell card, Secret Village of the Spellcasters. I'm thinking about running at least 2 of these cards, because if I'm running it at 1, there's like a less chance of me drawing this card. So a friend of mine also told me that I kind of misplayed with this card because I had Secret Village on my field and I had a few spells. What I didn't realize is that even though I did read the card, I just instantly forgot that if I don't control any spellcasters, I can't activate any of my spells. So what I should have realized is that I should not have played my Dark Magic Veil since I clearly not had any spells. But this one's like a really good card of using, so if you want to lock out your opponent from using spells, as long as you control spellcasters. Onto the traps. Now in most decks, you have to run 3 Magician Navigations. As I mentioned before, Navigation is a really good trap of using if you have a Dark Magician in your hand. You get to use this effect, special summon it from your hand, then you can also get to special summon a level 7 or lower Dark Spellcaster type monster from your deck. But you're more likely to want to bring it out either Knight and Sorcerer or Magician or Dark Illusion, or just for the sake of Dark Burning Magic, you would have to use Dark Magician Girl. And it's also good spell or trap negation if you use its effect except the turn you sent it to the graveyard. So yeah. Next, gotta run 3 copies of Eternal Soul. Now, Eternal Soul is like a main good card of using, but the downside is that if your opponent manages to destroy it, this card will basically Regeki you, so that it will destroy every single monster on your field if it's destroyed. But the best 2 effects is that you get to basically monster reborn your Dark Magician to your side of the field, and you basically get to search for a Dark Magic attack or 1,000 Knives from your deck to your hand, which is pretty good. Next, I run 2 copies of Mirror Force. Mirror Force is like a really generic card of using, so like if they attack you directly and if their monsters are in attack mode, you get to destroy them instantly with Mirror Force. And as a side note, Mirror Force doesn't target, it just destroys them instantly. Next, I run 1 copy of Dark Renewal. Dark Renewal at 2 in my deck originally felt a bit too cloggy, I suppose, so I limited it to 1 at least. But it does have a good decent effect, so like if your opponent summons a monster and you control a spellcaster, you can activate it, send them to the grave, and I did hear before that if a card states send, it doesn't count as destroying, you're just placing them in the graveyard. Then you get to summon any dark spellcaster type monster from your deck, except Source of Dark Magic, because it has to be special summoned only by attributing 2 level 6 or higher spellcasters. I know that was a bit off topic, but just to point that out. Breakthrough Skill. Breakthrough Skill is like a really good useful card of using in your deck. So like if your opponent has like a really annoying monster of them using, so like if they try dealing you double damage with Chaos Max, you can use Breakthrough Skill to negate that effect, so that if you have a monster in defense mode and you don't want to take double damage, you can just take some damage, I suppose. And yeah, you could probably annoy your opponent with this. Last trap I'm using is Solemn Warning. I'm thinking about taking out this card in case I do get Apprentice Illusion Magician, and it does have a high life point cost of using, so like if a monster will be summoned or when a spell or trap card is activated that includes an effect to special summon the monsters, you can pay 2,000 life points, negate the summon or activation and destroy it. So yeah, good counter trap of using. That's it for the main deck, and here is the extra deck. Extra deck has a low number of cards in it, but the extra deck's not really completed yet, but I'm working with what I have so far. I currently use the Phantom Knights of Breaksword because you do have Magician's Rod, which is a level 3, and you can use it for this. And you more likely want to use the first effect only because you'll want to destroy cards on your field and one of your opponent's field. So yeah. Next I run Ebon High Magician. Ebon High Magician, not many people really use, but if you're really desperate to use some of your trap cards against them, then it is pretty good. And what's good is that while it has Exceeds material, you can detach it and you get to activate spell or trap cards from your hand as quick play spells. And if it's destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to your graveyard, you can you can special summon a spellcaster type monster from your hand or deck as long as it's a dark attribute, and you get to destroy an additional card on the field as well. Next, I run number 11 Big Eye. Big Eye can be really annoying to get over because, one, it does have a drawback of it, because when you use this effect to take over a monster in your opponent's field, this one can't attack, so you have to wait next turn, despite being a 2600 attack monster. Next I run Ebon Illusion Magician. I only run one so far, because it does have a good effect to detach a material and special summon a spellcaster type normal monster from your hand or deck. And what's even better is that when a spellcaster type normal monster battles, you get to instantly target a card on your opponent's field and banish it. And that effect you can only use once per turn, which is quite decent. Next, the fusions. Your best boss monster of using Dark Magician and Dragon Knight. What's so good about this card is that 1, it counts as a Dark Magician while on the field or in a graveyard, meaning you can revive it with Eternal Soul. And what's better is that while this card's on the field, your opponent cannot target cards on your field nor destroy them with card effects. Therefore, it makes them untouchable for as long as this remains on the field. Meaning, you can also protect your Eternal Soul, Dark Magical Circle, and even your Secret Village if you do decide to run it. Though, if I do get another Eye of Timaeus, I might want to get another Dark Magician or Dragon Knight, which is a good idea of me doing. Next is Amulet Dragon. Amulet Dragon is a decent fusion monster of me using, but you're not likely wanting to summon this unless you really want to, that is if you do draw Eye of Timaeus. But it does have a good effect, so like, when you summon it, you get to target any number of spell cards in any player's graveyard, banish them, and this card will gain 100 points for each one. And when it's destroyed, you can target any spellcaster type monster in your graveyard, except Source of Dark Magic as aforementioned, you get to summon it. Basically, a simple monster reborn in this card's last effect. Last card in the extra deck, my favorite one, Dark Paladin. Shoutouts to 414 YGO. And normally with this card, you wouldn't really need Buster Blader, but as mentioned with Eye of Timaeus, you can just use Dark Magician along with Eye of Timaeus to summon either Dark Paladin, Amulet Dragon, or Dark Magician or Dragon Knight. And what's good is that, as mentioned against Dragon players, if you're using this card, this will definitely get over at least probably Chaos Max or just any decent Dragon type monsters. And what's cool is that it has similar effects to Sorcerer Dark Magic, except that this one's the complete opposite. This one can negate spell cards as long as you discard a card for its cost, while Sorcerer Dark Magic doesn't need a cost. You can just instantly negate that trap card with him. But with Dark Paladin, as aforementioned, you do need to discard a card to negate a spell card effect, or if your opponent activates a spell card. And yeah, for its last effect, it's basically Buster Blader to gain 500 points for each dragon in a graveyard, or in either player's graveyard, and yeah. So yeah, hold on a minute. So yeah, this has been my updated Dark Magician deck profile, and I'll see you guys next time. Subscribe to my channel.